Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. So recently I have really been in some sort of funk. I feel like I'm kind of like starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but definitely for a bit there I was kind of like stuck in this hobby and just with my collection in general. I feel like during the winter this is something that can happen a lot to us in the plant hobby, just because of the fact that our plants aren't growing. They're not really going to give us that chemical satisfaction anymore, and so we kind of have to adjust to sort of, you know, some more slower growth, slower care, things like that. And I think that more recently I've just kind of been in a stall in this hobby. And I mean, I feel like this hobby definitely has its peaks and its dives, and right now I'm kind of just in one of those dives where I'm not really feeling this plant hobby. I don't really feel enjoyment, I guess. And when I'm not enjoying my collection or where I'm at in the plant hobby, I tend to sort of go for that instant gratification of getting a new plant. And I'll usually end up buying plants, and it'll just add to those more overwhelming negative feelings that I get when I'm in these sort of dives. When I'm not enjoying my plants or my collection, I'll usually start by getting rid of plants that I'm not enjoying, because usually if I'm not enjoying my collection, I won't really feel the want to like actually sit down and care for my plants. And if I have to care for plants that I don't even really care to have in my collection, it just sort of adds up to those negative feelings, and it just really doesn't help my case. And I'll either, you know, start by throwing them out, selling them, whatever it may be. I know selling in the hobby can also be a pretty big, overwhelming hurdle as well when it comes to things like this. And so really just honing in on the plants that you're enjoying at the moment and really focusing on getting rid of those plants that aren't really a part of that group. And as of recently, I feel like that list has definitely built up a little bit more for me, just because in these dives you really get to see what isn't working. Not only see it, but you feel it. You feel the negative emotions that these plants are bringing you, and you just see that you're not enjoying them as much anymore. And when it comes to, you know, getting rid of those plants, I'll either try and sell them or give them away. Usually I end up giving them away. I think I've only sold a plant once, and it was like a pink princess cutting like a while ago. Yeah, I'm not really big on like setting up meetings and pricings and all of those. It's just an overwhelming factor to getting rid of these plants. So if I can cut out that factor and make someone else happy in the process, I usually tend to go for that. I have like plant people in my life already that I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm not really feeling this plant, here you go. So if you have some sort of relationship like that with someone, I definitely recommend to do that if you're okay with it, and if they're okay with it, of course. Another thing that I constantly am doing no matter what, even when I'm not in this sort of funk in this plant hobby, reorganizing your collection. I know for some people they will tend to have like rooms or like tents dedicated to their plants. I feel like reorganizing and cleaning it up, or just making it feel like it's something new or something fresh, can definitely help to that. And it'll also ease some of that stress when it comes to the hobby, because I know for me, getting to clean out my shelves or clean off my lights or clean off something that I can just tell has been there for a while, or that has dust on it, whatever it may be, it's definitely a good feeling to see something that's like really clean and pristine and all set up, especially when it comes to plants, you guys. Like when you get your plants in a perfect organization and it just like looks good, it looks aesthetically pleasing as well, it is such a good satisfaction. Another thing that I have also done more recently is chop up your plants. And there's sort of two parts of this that I want to talk about. The first portion was with my Tradescantia, actually. That plant in general stresses me out because it grows really fast, and recently I think it might have thrips. I'm not positive, but I am a little bit suspicious of it. And so I've just kind of been leaving it there, letting it do whatever it wants, and I've just kind of let that plant stress me out for way too long. It grows really, really fast. Like Tradescantia in general are a pretty easy houseplant and fast growers. And so recently I decided to just go to hacking on that plant, and I chopped off a whole bunch of vines, and I didn't even really think to really sell those. I honestly threw them away just because if it has thrips, I don't want to give those pests to anyone else. And if it doesn't have thrips, I just don't want to deal with selling, if I'm being honest, especially if it's Tradescantia. Like, it's kind of just redundant. But after I cut off all of those excess vines that were really stressing me out, it definitely made me feel a little bit better about where that plant is and how it looks. It made me feel better when I was caring for it too, because it doesn't look like a scraggly mess like it did before. It just kind of cleans it up a little bit more. Or the second portion that I wanted to talk about is chopping your plants completely back, like chopping the whole thing back to like the last node, or just cutting off all the foliage, whatever it may be. I think can also sort of help this, like especially if it's a plant like the Tradescantia that tends to stress you out, or you just don't like the way that it's growing, things like that. Chopping it back all the way will, I feel like, I haven't done this, so don't take my word for it, but I feel like it's something that will just excite you a little bit more, because that plant is going to grow even more vigorous than it did before. It's going to be adjusted to your conditions. Overall, just getting to watch a plant grow back from nothing can be a really, really exciting thing to experience in the hobby. I'd only recommend to do this if you have grow lights, because now as we're going into that sort of winter stage, or the fall season, I think that it's probably not the best time to do that unless you have like supplemented light. But another thing that I have always sort of strived for in my collection, no matter what, is finding fun ways to display your plants so that they excite something inside of you, whether that is a kokedama, tamandama, or even like a wabikusa, or just like finding a very, very aesthetically pleasing vessel or a cute ceramic pot. Like, it can literally be whatever, everything in between. It can really just be whatever you want it to be. I have also like messed around with bringing driftwood into my houseplants and sort of designing and displaying with those things, and it definitely makes the hobby feel new and fresh and creative too. One plant that I can think of that sort of applies to this is my begonia. I am not really interested in begonia maculatas that are like really full and really bushy and just really like, again, full and bushy. I'm talking about cane begonias in specific. Recently, I did see someone who displayed their begonia in a different manner than they normally are. And this has truly, truly, truly been the main inspiring factor for me wanting to now have a begonia, because I have never seen anyone display them in this sort of way. I guess this would also apply to that, as in like, grow your plants in a way that works for you and makes you feel invigorated and excited to see that plant grow. And I think that for begonia, for a long, long, long time, this was a thing that I struggled with, because a lot of the times you just see, again, you see a begonia with like a bunch of stalks in a pot and it looks really, really full. But seeing how this person has displayed their begonia in such a beautiful way really has made me want to own that plant, and it's definitely a thing that excites me to see for the future and to grow even now. So I think things like this can definitely add to that more invigorating feeling in this hobby. Another thing I wanted to talk about is shift your plant goals. Let's say you grew something to maturity and it's not, you're not really enjoying those bigger leaves or just how they look, and you're sort of more enjoying those like more mature leaves. Chop it back, grow it just as an immature plant so that you get that enjoyment out of that plant. And also feel less stressed, because although big plants are nice, with big plants comes a lot of stress with conditions, lighting, pot size. Like, there's so many things that can come from having a bigger plant. And I think that allowing yourself to sort of take a step back and redo the drawing board, or just brainstorm a little bit to see where you really want to grow this plant to, will definitely ease some stress off of this hobby. And just like throughout the winter especially, I think it's definitely something that could help ease that sort of funk that we all tend to get into. Or like I said before, maybe you just are dissatisfied with how your plant is growing. Find different ways to grow it, whether that's creatively or just in general growing it up a moss pole, or taking it off of its moss pole, or I don't know, trying to grow it in a fish tank or something, like just really shifting those goals to find more enjoyment in that plant. Another thing, if something isn't pleasing you, don't feel guilty or sorry for allowing it to be out of your life, whether that's a plant propagation, a pot that you don't like, don't feel guilty for throwing it out. Don't feel guilty for giving it away. Don't feel guilty for just not finding that satisfaction anymore or those good, happy feelings from it. If it's not pleasing you, just don't feel afraid to throw it out or do whatever you want with it, because it is, at the end of the day, it is your money, your time, and your plant, especially, that you've already, you know, put so much effort into. And if you don't feel like really, again, like selling before, like I said, I'm one that's going to stand right there with you by the trash can and tell you to throw that thing out if you don't want it. So yeah. And lastly, if you were still not finding that sort of spark that you had before, I think that trading would be a good option as well, because I know that for me, when I am sort of, I don't want to say a plant ban, because I don't go on plant bans. There's just sort of moments where I sort of decide to stop buying plants. It's not that I'm like on a plant ban, it's just like I'm not really buying plants right now, and if I find something and I see something that I like and I buy it, it is what it is. But I know that even when purchasing plants when you're not supposed to be buying plants, or when you're on a plant ban, it can kind of make you feel guilty. And I feel like I get this no matter what. Like, even if I'm okay with buying plants, I still get that sort of guilty feeling. Oh my god, you guys, I'm sorry if I'm starting to sound like a frog. My throat is actually starting to hurt. But I think that trading is a better route to go if you are one of those people that tends to feel guilty after purchasing plants, or if you just are on a plant ban, whatever it may be. I think that trading is a really, really good option, and it's a really good thing that I appreciate in this hobby, just because it's an alternative to something that can be stressful. And especially when trading, it's just kind of like a lot simpler, I feel like. I have traded before, but it wasn't like anything too big. And I think that this could also help with like plants that you're not enjoying as much. Like, if you don't want to trade those, or if you don't want to sell those, you can go the trading route and still get that feeling of something new and something fresh in your space. Yeah, with all of that being said, that is all that I have for you guys today. Let me know anything that you guys do down below. I feel like I definitely try to stick to things that I tend to incorporate in my plant care or my hobby whenever I'm sort of in that funk. I feel like we also need to validate that things are going to feel different in the winter than they are in the summer, because in the summer I feel like there's the sun, there is just a vibe going around that just feels really uplifting and really happy, and your plants are growing. And then during the winter it kind of comes to a slow, steadily growing, and it's just not the same feeling as the summer. I think something that also helped me through this sort of process is finding things to enjoy in the winter. In the winter and the fall, there's a lot more of that energy and that more comfy feeling to go plant shopping, to go, I don't know, just sit and do plant chores. Like, I feel like it's such a cozy time, versus during the summer where you're just like keeping on top of your plants and always going out and things like that. It's just finding different things to enjoy in each season. And I feel like that is something that has definitely helped me not sort of just go into a deep dive into that sort of funky, gross, overwhelming feeling that I get from my plants when I'm in the winter, or just like in general when it's like not really a good time. But yeah, I hope this helped, and feel free to let me know anything that you guys do down below when you're sort of in a overwhelming, stressful, just not really feeling your plants sort of vibe. I'd love to hear it. And with all of that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and I truly, truly hope you enjoyed.